What's going on, everybody? Back again for my midweek Q&A. If you're just joining us for the first time, once a week on Wednesdays, I post a video where I just kind of give my opinion on some collector questions. So if you are interested in having your question featured in an upcoming episode, down below, please, in the comments, just simply ask your question and I'd be happy to answer it. And every week I go through 5 questions and give my opinion. And again, these are always going to be opinion-based questions, preference-based questions, things like that, not necessarily things that would have right or wrong answers. So with that said, we've got 5 really great questions that I'm excited to get to this week. So let's take a look at the first question of the week right now.
What card have you been looking for the longest without actually finding a card that meets your criteria for condition, price, and etc.?
All right. Love this question. We all have a card that we've wanted for a long time. That's just the way that it is, right? We all have a card that since we were young or for years or maybe months that we have wanted, but we haven't yet picked up. And as soon as we pick that card up, there will be another card that we're longing for. So my dad and I would go to big card shows as a kid, and this started back in about 1987 and 88. So I've been going to card shows for a really, really long time. And my dad was a set builder, and as I've mentioned before, he collected the 59 and 60 baseball sets. So as we know, most set collectors are going through one card at a time, usually in boxes. And so we would go to these big shows and, my dad would be spending a fair amount of time at the shows. And so as a kid, and in this time I'm about 10 to 12 years old, I would end up at the show with a lot of extra time after I had gone through the show looking for things I would pick up, while my dad was still going through boxes of commons trying to find the right one to add to his collection. Well, what tended to happen is, since he hung out in the vintage areas, I found myself kind of hanging out in the vintage areas too, but looking through the cases. And I was really drawn to a few cards. Now, I've always loved the nostalgia of the golden age, golden era of cards that my dad was collecting. Because again, in the 59 and 60 set, there's Mantles and Banks and Aaron and Clemente and all those guys. And so I'm familiar with all of them because, I'm looking through my collection with my dad all the time. So as I'm going through the cases, the thing that I really focused on when I would look through those old vintage cases back in the late 80s was the cards that really caught my eye because of the look of the card. Well, since I was about 10, there have always been 3 cards that I've really wanted. And I still don't have any of them. And why I don't have any of them, I don't really have a good answer for. I guess that they've not met my eye appeal or price or what. But there are 3 cards that I've wanted for a really, really long time, like literally for 35 years. Now, the first one I've talked about a fair amount. It is my number 1 Grail baseball card, and I will get it, and I'm kind of leaning toward making a stronger push and doing it sooner rather than later, and that's the 1954 Ernie Banks card. And one of the things I love about that card is that he looks so young, but he looks so happy, and with that light background, the way that his face just pops off with the great colors in his cap and the old Cubs logo. It's just, I love the look of the card. And quite frankly, whenever I would see Ernie Banks, and he was at card shows that I would see him as a kid, and he was also, on TV and always at Cubs games, and you'd see coverage of him. He always looked so happy. He just seemed like the nicest guy. Even look at cards from like the 50s and 60s. A lot of the cards, the players aren't even looking at the camera. But it seems like most of the time, Ernie Banks had a giant smile on his face. Well, a lot of players just weren't smiling. So that card is definitely one of the three, and I still don't have it. So what are the other two? Well, one is the 1948 Bowman Yogi Berra. And I've said to my dad for a long time, I want that card, and I kind of want one that's sort of trashed. I want one that is well loved. I want one with worn corners, not corners that are like bent, but corners that are just worn because it had been handled and touched and shown around and shown off to friends of whoever owned it, loved it. And those super soft corners, to me, would add a lot to the card. So I do want a Yogi Berra 1948 Bowman, and I've wanted one for a long time. And when birthdays would come around and stuff, my dad would always say, hey, what do you want for your birthday, or do you want it for your Christmas list or something? And a lot of the times I would say a 48 Bowman Yogi Berra, and I want it to be trashed. And I still don't have one, but I'll get one. The third card that I've wanted since I was about 10 is another card that the thing that jumps out to me is how young he looks, how young the player looks. And it's another rookie card, and it's the 1957 Brooks Robinson. Now, when you look at that card, to me, Brooks Robinson looks so young. He looks just kind of happy. And even though he doesn't have like this massive smile on his face, there's something about it that just catches my eye. And Brooks Robinson is still alive. Brooks Robinson still signs autographs through the mail. And Brooks Robinson is just another guy that I think of as a likable guy. And that's one of the things when you look at the three cards that I wanted, or that I want and have had wanted for so long, is they're all really, really likable people, like likable human beings. And I think that's part of what I'm drawn to, is that every time I saw them, every time I'd see video of them, every time I'd see those cards, I'm like, they just look like a nice guy. So those are the three cards. And quite frankly, there's a certain part of me that almost feels like if I got one at this point, that I would no longer be looking for one. And there's something about looking for the right one that is still kind of fun. I mean, on my save to eBay searches, I look for them weekly and have for years and years and years. And if I were to get one, it's almost like that would be over. And so it's kind of weird that as much as I'd like to have one, I don't know if I'm ready for the search to be over. And we all know as collectors, the search, that's part of the fun. And I really enjoy the search of those cards. And every time I'm at a show and I see one, I still get a little bit of maybe that's the one. And that would be gone if I got one. So when I get one, I don't know. Will I get one? I have no doubt someday I'll have all three. But there will be something that I'll miss about not searching for each of them when I eventually get one.
You said your budget is a Ben Franklin, $100 per month. What if you only had $25? Would love to see some content of you at one of your card shows and what you could buy with only $25. At recent card shows, I've struggled to find cards within my budget.
Love this question. I think a lot of us are in this case. Now, it's important to be financially responsible, right? We can't just go out and buy stuff because we do or even don't have money in the bank for it. We have to make sure that we are buying the things that we should be buying for life, and then be thinking about the extra things in life, like our card collection. So depending on where we are in life, our budget might not be very big, or it might be growing. For me, I've mentioned before that in my monthly budget, I pull aside $100 a month in order to buy cards. Sometimes I spend the whole $100, and sometimes it carries over to the next month. But that's the only money that comes out of my family's monthly budget from my paychecks that go toward cards. So then you'll see, well, wait a second, he just bought a Willie Keeler T206 card. How did he do that? I thought he only had $100 a month. Well, the other money that I use for sports cards is anything that I earn from sports cards. So, one of the things that I recommend is use sports cards. Use the hobby to pay for your hobby. Now, this past weekend, just a few days ago, I posted a video on Sunday, and the video was me buying some cards at a card show. Only a couple of those cards were for my PC. When I bought 4 Garbage Pail Kids, well, I bought 6 cards. 4 of them were cards that I knew were way more valuable than I bought them for. I bought those cards to sell. I didn't buy those cards to keep. And I've actually already sold 3 of them. See, I bought these cards for $2 each, and 2 of them I sold for $20 each already on eBay. And one of them I sold a set of 2 for $18 on eBay. So I spent $12 on the 6 cards, and I've already made $58 back, and I still have 2 of the cards. Now, one of the things that I do when I'm at a card show is I'm not just on the hunt for my PC. I'm also on the hunt for easy deals that I could make that are out there to help fund my card habit. So some of you saw a whole bunch of cards in a $5 box of football cards, vintage football cards that were $5 each. And a lot of the cards in there, people were like, why didn't you grab that? Why didn't you grab that? That was, a $10 card. That was an $8 card. That was a cool card. Only a couple of those cards are going to go into my own PC. The Warren Moon rookie card that I picked up being one of them. Marcus Allen's rookie card is another one. But some of those other cards I bought because I knew that they were easy sales. So for example, the 1969 Johnny Unitas that I bought, that card is a $25 to $40 card if I didn't get it graded. Just raw, I think it's a $25 to $40 card in that kind of condition. So when I can buy it for $5 and I know I can sell it on eBay for $25, I just made $20 that I can put towards my next show for cards for my PC. So sometimes when we go to shows, I don't think we should just be on the lookout for stuff for our PC. I think another thing that you could be doing is digging through some of those boxes of vintage football cards or binders of Garbage Pail Kids. If there's something that you're knowledgeable about and you know something is worth way more than they're asking, even though I may not be planning on keeping it for myself, I'll buy it because I can then make money to fund my card habit. So a lot of the times you can kind of get a feel for a dealer. There are professional dealers. You're not going to get an amazing deal from a professional dealer. You'll get a good deal at times or a fair deal at times, but you're not going to get a crazy deal at times. The time you're going to get a crazy deal is when a guy is doing a card show for the first time and he's got a nice vintage football card collection and he's just ready to liquidate it. Or he's selling some cards for his friend, or he's selling some cards that he inherited from a family member that he has no attachment to. And every $5 bill that shows up is $5 more than he woke up with that day. Or the guy who's got a binder full of second and third and fourth series garbage pail kids, and there might be some hidden gems in there that are in particularly nice condition. So when you're looking for PC cards, that's one thing. But I really recommend that you find those dealers out there that are not the professional dealers. And when you find those guys, there is a lot of money to be had. Now, a few months ago, I did a video about this epic card show in Fairfield. And I got into this box with mostly 58s and 59 Topps baseball cards. And I was pulling out Eddie Matthews cards and Duke Snider cards and some unbelievable stuff. And the prices that he was asking was crazy. He was asking $250 per card. And it didn't take long to know this was not a professional dealer, and he inherited the cards from his uncle. And he didn't want them, he just wanted the money. So he had no emotional attachment to them. And to him, a Duke Snider was no different than some random common. So when I bought a 1958 Harmon Killebrew out of that box, knowing I could sell it for $20, I knew that was not a card I was going to be keeping for my collection, because that was not a card that is really on my PC list. But I saw it as, well, this is going to be $17.50 in profit that I could use to go toward my PC list. So when you're at a show, my advice is, don't just look at the professional dealers' tables. Look at the guy who just seems to be trying to get rid of some stuff he doesn't want anymore. That's where the deals are going to be found. And you can use those easy flips to fund your habit, your hobby, however you want to put it. But sometimes it's best to spend your small budget on something that's going to be an easy sale. Now, never buy something to flip unless you know you can flip it with enough profit to make it worth your time. So when I was looking through that vintage $5 box, and there were a lot of cool $10 and $11 and $12 cards, if I sell a $12 card that I bought for $5 on eBay, eBay's going to get a couple of dollars, and I'm going to have to go through the process of listing it, packaging it, and mailing it to make $4 or $5. Probably not worth it unless it's a card I want for my PC. But if it's a card that I'm going to make, I don't know, $10 to $15 on, yeah, $10 to $15 to list something on eBay in 3 minutes and 5 minutes to pack it up when it sells and drop it off at the post office, no problem. I'll take $10 for 10 minutes worth of work. But for $4, probably not worth it. So that would be my advice. But value boxes are the way to go. And finding the dealer who's not the professional dealer, because the professional dealer knows what he's got and he knows what it's worth. The guy who's just trying to liquidate something that he had for years or inherited from somebody, the emotional attachment's gone, and every sale is just they're looking at as free money. That's where you're going to find your deals. So that would be my advice at card shows if you have a small budget. Build your budget from finding the deals at card shows.
Can you talk about Wander Franco and why modern is not the way to go?
Yeah, the Wander Franco thing is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But we never know what's going to happen with current players. Could be a catastrophic injury. Those happen, right? Could be a personal issue, a drug issue, a allegation issue. There have been a lot of athletes over the last 20 years that have had issues. Now, I don't think it's just the current players. there have been some things that have come out about, say, Lawrence Taylor or Karl Malone, who the news that we've heard and the things that we've heard, even though these were unbelievable talents, have turned people away from collecting their collectibles because of some of the personal issues and stories that we've heard. Now, I don't know what's true. I don't know what's not. But I know when there's unfavorable news that comes out about somebody, it's going to reduce some demand from other collectors. And by reducing some of the demand, it's going to bring down the price. So, yes, I agree that Wander Franco is an example to us that prospects could have something happen and young current players could have something happen, whether it be personal or injury related. But I also think to a certain extent that could happen with retired people too. But there's probably not going to be a lot of breaking news coming out about Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle or Hank Aaron or some of these other all-time greats whose story has been told and are no longer with us. So when you're talking about volatility, it's always a risk when it's a current player, and it's always a risk, quite frankly, if somebody's still living. It's not until after we've lost them that it's a pretty safe bet that there's not going to be new news. Now, it happens occasionally. A book will come out or something will be found or a story will be told. So it's never going to be completely safe. But the younger the player, the more career they have left and the more life they have to live, the more likely that there could be some unsavory news come out about somebody.
We all agree that competition will help all in card grading. What would be the most important thing for a company to offer? Price, turnaround time, use of technology, etc.
This is a really good question, but it is a tough question. In the competition wars of grading companies, what's the most important thing? I think it kind of depends on what it is that we're talking about. I mean, if you're a dealer, if you're a flipper, you want fast turnaround time. You want to get a card that's not graded, get it in a holder, and get it sold before something happens. So turnaround time is pretty important for anyone in the industry, because if you're talking about a current player, an injury could happen, news could happen, something could break while the card is being graded. Again, I've mentioned this before, but a lot of these YouTube channels that you watch of these young card guys, these young card channels, most of those guys are not holding those cards for more than about 24 hours. They're just trying to do thin margins, high volume, high prices, flip that card, keep it moving. They even say that, keep it moving, keep it moving. So if a card takes 65 days at PSA, that's a big risk that something might happen in those 65 days. So I think turnaround time is really important. I think price is less important. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of these young flippers will send cards in to be submitted at the higher prices with the quicker turnaround time, because it reduces their risk of something happening. So I think turnaround time is more important than price for the professional card flipper, card grader, dealer. For a collector, turnaround time's not really that important because you're not going to be getting rid of the card anyway. So for a collector, I don't think turnaround time is the answer. If we're talking about price is really important to like a set builder, because if the price is $25 a card, you're not going to get a common graded. A set builder wants a low price because the low price allows them to get the card graded with less risk and less having to be forked over to get the grade and get the card in the holder. So I don't think there's one across the board answer. You know, the other thing that was mentioned, I think, was it use of technology? Yeah, use of technology was mentioned. And the thing about use of technology is consistency is important. In fact, I might go so far as to say if I had to pick one thing, consistency might be the most important. I mean, PSA's been catching a lot of heat recently because a lot of people feel they haven't been that consistent. And I think SGC recently has done some catching up to PSA because SGC's had a lot more positive opinions about the consistency, but their turnaround time has also been pretty good. So hard to know, but it kind of depends. The other thing that wasn't mentioned, but I think is important, is resale value. Historically, PSA has had the highest resale value, and I think a lot of that has to do with their set registry. But if SGC starts to catch up to PSA in resale value, and that could happen, I don't know, to be determined, from their coming set registry, that could play a role as well. So long story short, I don't think there's an easy answer. I think it kind of just depends on what the collector or the dealer is all about. Are they about rapid turnover? Are they about set building for their own collection? Are they about resale value for long in the future? So I think they all matter, but what matters most would depend on the goals of that personal individual and what their collecting or dealing habits or goals are.
Let's talk about trading. Nobody does it anymore. Do you think the community will ever get back to trading?
You know, that's an interesting one. I think there are trades. I mean, you know, sports card investor Jeff Wilson, he had a whole thing at the National where he basically had a stand, a booth, and he had people come up and he made a whole bunch of trades. I feel like I see YouTube channels where there's trading that happens, and sometimes there's cash to even a trade out or make the trade happen. So I do think trading happens, but it's not like when we were kids. When we were kids, everything was a trade. But that's because kids didn't have money then. Now apparently they do. I watch these videos and the amount of money these kids have as disposable income for sports cards, I'm insanely jealous of. It's kind of crazy. I think there is trading, but here's another thing I'll just throw out there. You know, if you look at like sports, in baseball, two teams will make a trade for a player. In football, two teams will make a trade for a player. But if you look at soccer, if you look at worldwide soccer, oh my gosh, is he talking about soccer? Well, yeah, just hear me out for a second. The way that soccer works for clubs is they buy players. They buy the rights to the player. So, you know, the English Premier League might have Chelsea, who buys the rights to a player from a La Liga player or a La Liga team like Barcelona. You might have a Bundesliga league like, you know, Bayern Munich buy a player from Tottenham Hotspur in the English Premier League. And they very rarely trade players. It's cash. When you sell something, it is a trade. You're trading cash for the card. And then with that cash, you can buy a different card. It's kind of like a three-way trade. And cash is the medium that allows the trade to happen. So I hear what you're saying about trading cards for cards. And you're right. That was something as kids that we did, and that was pretty much the only way you'd get a card is you'd trade some of your stuff for some of their stuff. It would have been kind of weird in 1987 if I went to my neighbor and said, I like that card, I'll give you $5 for it. That's not what we did. He looked through my cards, I looked through his cards, and then we found cards of each other that we liked, and we made a deal. again, I kind of feel like that happens a little bit, but it kind of makes things easier if we buy cards for cash and then use that cash to buy cards from somebody else instead of needing the person that I'm in front of to have what I want and I have what he wants, and we can find values that we can agree upon. It's a little bit more difficult than just selling it to him, using the cash to buy what I want from whoever has it. And quite frankly, I think the rarer the stuff that you're into, if you're into pre-war baseball cards, the odds of somebody having a pre-war baseball card that you really want and you have a pre-war baseball card that they really want is a lot less likely than when we were kids and we were all collecting 1987 Topps cards and I wanted a McGuire and my friend wanted a Bonds. That would have been an easier deal. But it's just hard to find a trade partner because the rarer the cards, the less likely the card you really are after is the card that the person has that is opposite of the card they really want. And so cash just makes it easier. I think that answers your question. And I don't know if it's a good answer, but that's kind of my take on it. So that does it for this week. 5 questions down once again. Again, I really genuinely look forward to seeing the questions that you all have for me. So if you have any question you want my opinion on, my thoughts on, and again, these are just opinions. I could give opinions that someone could easily say, that was a dumb opinion. You know what? I don't know. You're right. I probably was wrong on that one. And I'm happy to change my opinions too. So down below, don't just post questions that you'd be interested in hearing my take on. Also, give your opinion on my take of my answers to these questions if your opinion is different than mine. That said, I look forward to seeing what you post down below in the comments for questions for next week. And as always, Wednesday, my favorite video of the week, I look forward to all week long.